The next one, oh yeah, this one's important. The idea of a proxy. Okay, so proxy is short for the word proximate, so or close. You know, so the idea is this is really only really works with Terran and Protoss. Zergs can't really do this very well because they have to build on creep. But it's the idea of building your unit producing structures outside of your base and very close to your opponent's base. Now, what does this do? This is really just a sort of a rush that you're building very close. Basically, you're cutting down the time it takes your units to get to your opponent's base. So if I build three barracks or two barracks right in his natural, say, which wouldn't work at high level play, just for an example. I build it right in his natural expansion, and I build a bunch of Marines and I walk him right into his base, and he's just flat-footed. He has no idea it was coming. He wasn't ready. He couldn't see it coming, and I walk right over him. That's a very all-in-ish maneuver, a proxy, but it's not exactly that. It is, but it isn't. So you can have a proxy that is an all-in, but you can also have a proxy that isn't an all-in. So that I'm not going to go any more with that. This one is pretty basic. I just wanted to gloss over this. The idea of hotkeys and control groups. A lot of times, casters will talk about a player's hotkeys, which are now viewable in replays. If I click on one of his units, I can see what all his hotkeys and all his control groups are. It's really this idea of trying to split up your units in the most efficient way possible, so that if I have this force of units, and then I have hydras and roaches and infestors. Okay, I want each one of those to a different hotkey. So I want all my roaches on one, all my hydras on two, and all my infestors on three, so that in the battle I can control them individually for the best effect. That's the idea behind that. The next one I want to talk about is scouting, which, again, this is a very basic one, but also a very, very important one, and something that you'll see a lot, because scouting at the high level is extremely important. And commentators will always say, if something doesn't get scouted, so say a Protoss player, he partially walls himself in, and I'm a Zerg, and I have a drone in his base, and I'm waltzing around, and I can see that he's got one gateway, he's got cybernetics core, and all of a sudden a stalker comes out and kills my drone. Well, that's my scouting's done now. Unless I get an overlord in there to look at more stuff, I have my scouting. But say he kills my drone and he immediately builds a Stargate and he starts pumping out a Void Ray. I didn't scout that. I have no idea that that's there. Okay, so this is the sort of idea that the scouting is to know what your opponent's going to do. And if you don't know what your opponent's going to do, you're screwed. Because, especially if some sort of maneuver like that, where you're not prepared for an air unit comes, you could legitimately lose the game to that. And that's one of the next things that we're going to talk about. So scouting is sort of idea that you do often with workers at the beginning of the game. Almost every player, every time, will scout with his worker around varying supplies. Some will send it off at 8, 9, 10, 15, depending on the build, they'll send out their worker scouts to find their enemy's base, which is really one of the biggest things, and then find out what he's building, so that they can, sort of change what they're doing in order to fit. I can't use the word counter, Dana. In order to respond to what your opponent's going to do, so you have to build units so that you don't lose. Okay, and sort of going along with that, we're going to talk about something that's used a lot, and a term that, well, maybe not a lot, but you will see is sort of this idea of cheese. And by cheese, I don't mean the dairy product cheese. I mean sort of this cheesy play, sort of this cheap strategies, things that really rely on a build that relies on one specific thing winning them the game. So what is this? So basically, like my other example, going back to the example with the Protoss who kills my scout and immediately throws on Stargate and gets the Void Ray. That's a cheesy sort of play, because in certain scenarios, that Void Ray will win him the game. And it's sort of a cheap way to lose, because it's not like he was that much more skilled than I was. He just, got a Void Ray in my base and I wasn't prepared for it. And so Void Rays are often called cheesy. Banshees with Cloak are often called a very cheesy play. And Banelings, many people think that Banelings are very cheesy, and Baneling busts are very cheesy. So that's sort of, it's really opinion on what's cheesy and what's not. And there's some players who think it's all right, and some players like Idra who will rage and rage and rage when they get cheesed. And so it's really a matter of opinion. But it's good. It's a good idea to get your head around. The last two things I want to talk about are very related. The first thing is expanding, and what that term means. Expanding is just the idea of building another base in order to increase your resource and income. So in other words, if I have two bases, I have double the income. So if I have two bases and my opponent has one base, then I have double his income. And, well, this is theoretically. I have double his income, I can build more units, and I can win the game. So that's really the idea when you hear the word expansion and expanding. And that's the idea behind it, is to gain some sort of economic advantage. And going along with that, the idea of a natural expansion, which I probably should have explained first. A natural expansion is a very simple term, actually. You have your main base where you start off, and on almost every map that you'll play, you'll have a natural expansion. In other words, it's an expansion that's right next to your main base that's easily accessible, so that you can, at any point in time, just take your expansion, and you can easily defend both your expansion and your main. And it's easier on some maps than it is on others. And oftentimes the natural expansion can also be very dangerous to take. A good example as an example of this is the map Kulas Ravine. To expand onto your natural, Kulas Ravine is often considered a very risky maneuver because high grounds overlook your natural. So oftentimes players will look for a safer first base to take. That's pretty much it. I will be making another video or set of videos depending on time. I hope to release tomorrow, probably just before the game releases at midnight. Yes, I will be going to a midnight release and hopping right on. So yeah, the next video that I make will be much like this video, but terminology more geared towards individual races, things that you'll see for each race. Also very common builds that you'll know, so if a caster mentions a certain build, you'll know what he's talking about. And that's about it. Thank you guys for listening, and I promise that live action videos are coming soon, so please just bear with me for the time being. Alright, thank you guys. Talk to you later.